What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. I'm BobbyFi. I'm here with my man, Eric Sheets as usual. We are going to be doing an NBA breakdown. Real quick before, I'm going to do a very, very brief vent. I'm a little frustrated. I have had a rough few slates, which, that happens when you're playing tournaments. There's been some good plays and some bad ones. I just can't seem to get the right mix, and you get an injury or an ejection, a weird lineup I had that was really, really good, about 15 points away from I think, winning a single-entry tournament. Had maybe 20 points away. But I had Ken Bazemore. He was ejected early in the third. Not that he was going to get there, but he certainly had the chance to get there. A lot of weird stuff going on. I just feel a little frustrated. I'm ready for today. We've got a bunch of injury news, but I think I have a good idea of what I want to do. Sheets, what are your thoughts sort of lately? What's been going on?
You know what? Don't. You should know this by now, and I think instinctively you do know this, but you shouldn't really get frustrated on a day-by-day basis because you're playing a game which has just an incredible amount of variance to it. And it always brings up an interesting concept of how do you judge how well you're playing, right? Because if you just judge it based on results on a day-by-day basis, it can be very frustrating. And if what you should do, if in my opinion, okay, is when the lineups come out, when the games start, you should see how your exposure is relative to ownership, okay? And you should then kind of gauge, are these the lineups that I would have played had I known what was going on, okay? And if you're content with it from when the slate starts, you really shouldn't let the results of it affect how you feel about it. And I know it's very difficult. And, it comes back from poker. Sometimes someone will complain, oh, my God, I can't believe it. I just busted out of the tournament. I got it in, a set versus a pair, and he got there, whatever it is. I'm like, well, you should be happy. You should be happy that you got it in a set versus a pair because that's really all you can do. And I know it's difficult, and especially with the NBA, with the injuries and things like that, you're just going to have to, if you don't want to embrace the variance that's associated with it, you at least have to respect it and just accept it because, it's like everything else in life. For all the times that you got screwed by having an injured player, we forget about the times that our equity went way up because of some other injured player, right? So, those things do kind of even out, and it is kind of difficult. But, on a day-by-day basis, it's kind of counterproductive to get frustrated.
Absolutely, and I agree, and I'm mostly pretty good about this stuff. And even yesterday, it wasn't even the injury thing that bothered me. I mean, look, there was two very fluky things that happened. Derrick Rose had 6 fantasy points in the first half. He ended with 40. I think that if he has a normal half, I think you're looking at a Derrick Rose with potentially 50 or 60. That would have been a monster spot. And then you have Damian Lillard, who with 8 minutes to go had 16 fantasy points, which we just never see, and still ended up with 40, which we sort of always see him going that crazy late. And I was actually getting mocked on sites. I'm not going to name the names, but like people who actually have made a fortune off of me, who have backed me in certain things, were getting pissed off that I played Damian Lillard with so many great guards. And I'm going, by the end of the day, he only had 4 less fantasy points than Lowry, and it literally took his net low of a first 3 quarters for him to get there. Anyway, I feel good about the process. I think we're on the right track. I just think it's one of those times you have to suffer through a few days of losing, and hopefully it turns around tonight. I think this is a good slate for it. What are your overall thoughts, like first looking at this slate?
So there's some key injuries as always that are going to drive. There's going to put a lot of chalk up on the board, especially value wise, and there's going to be places where that chalk is needed, not needed, but let's say appreciated. But the interesting thing is, and this is kind of the way it all kind of snowballs, to take really chalky value so that you can get really chalky spend ups. So that becomes an interesting question. Is that the way you want to go? Do you want to, get the chalky spend ups by virtue of the fact that you can play the chalky values? And I don't know. I think that's kind of an interesting philosophy, and we'll get to them. I mean, again, we don't want to hold you in suspense or whatever. You have a slate where Harden's playing without Westbrook, and he's going to be projecting really, really well, and that's what people are going to want to play for good reason. And then there are other value plays which we'll get to that'll make that very, very easy to do. So you're going to have to make that call. Is it worth just eating double chalk, like eating value chalk plus spend up chalk in a GPP. And concomitant with that is the question is there enough elsewhere where you can play low own stuff that you can even make that kind of build and make that work. So
yeah,
we'll get to it.
I want to touch on that. It's a really good point. The way I like to build generally when these situations come up where you have obvious spend ups and obvious cheap chalk, which is probably going to be what happens a lot these days because we keep getting these late injuries things. Last night we had Harry Giles at 70%. I was fully on board with that 70%. He's a terrible play. But then at 15% on FanDuel, where I knew he'd be lower, I didn't know he'd be that much lower, was a much better play. The point is, though, if you're going to have these, so there's two ways to go about it. One, you can pivot to a less owned, more high price guy. Maybe Luka will be lower owned tonight for sure than Harden will. They're both going to have some ownership, is my guess. But like something like that, or what I like to try to do is get my value and then go for the upper mid tier, maybe the lower top tier type of thing. Because or just basically the guys people avoid. That's just a game theory thing. I'm not sure that's where I'm going to end up tonight. But everybody likes to try and they see the ultimate value. They immediately want to take the most expensive players in the best spot without realizing that, hey, maybe I could get two other 9K guys in instead of the 13K and a 5K with my guys, or 12.8 and a 5K. And it just is an interesting way of differentiating. And I think you'll find that the way that I do it generally is actually safer, and I believe has more upside because it's much harder for a guy like James Harden to 8x his price, where you might get two guys who are 8K who could 8x their price. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. If you and like anything else, if you have the right 8K guys, I mean, when you have those guys like, and we'll talk about it, but there's a difference between the upside of like an 8K Devin Booker as opposed to an 8K. I don't know. I don't even want to get into it. Jimmy Butler. You know what I mean? We could talk about that.
Let's get into game by game. Our goal here, as we talk about all the time, is that we want to make the people better. We want to not just offer a few plays. We want to talk about strategy and ways to approach different slates and things that maybe aren't covered as much on other shows as we think are valuable. So sometimes our shows go longer, but we're hitting on a lot of good stuff. I mean, I did a lot of training videos for Roto Grinders with a lot of other people, and these videos that we do, I think, are more informative than those videos are in terms of how to play tournament GPPs.
Well, let's do. We're sort of doing both in a way today because we already kind of set forth kind of an overall landscape of what the slate's going to be like with the Harden thing. So when we go through the game by game, I'll always have that in the back of my mind and how the plays kind of relate to those kind of builds.
Let's do it. Let's call your screen up and we're going to get straight into it. Truth be told, I have done no builds yet. So I am.
Neither have I. So we're going to be in good shape.
I've got ownerships written in, which I did. I've done it on the last two shows, but I haven't actually scripted. Today, I'm just debating whether or not to, but I have a lot of it's just a very interesting multi-entry slate. So we'll touch on that, and we'll touch on how to play if you're going to play 1 to 3 entries also.
Okay. So Miami against Indiana, there are a couple of questionable tags that kind of surprised me a little bit.
Winslow just announced in, by the way.
Who was?
Winslow just announced in.
Okay. Winslow is announced in, but Sabonis I had a questionable tag here. He's expected to play through. We'll see. Okay. So again, he's someone you have to look out for. And the good thing is that, it's a 7:00 game and, it cuts both ways. If in fact he's ruled out, then I presume that Turner becomes a really, really good play. Yet on the other hand, he's going to be really popular as a result of it. So we're going to have to kind of figure that out. But I'm operating for this at this time of the day under the assumption that Sabonis is in. But the other really interesting part of this, not so much on Draftkings, but we'll talk about it on FanDuel. But Malcolm Brogdon, although he's listed as questionable, the report that we saw was that while he didn't practice, he did a full court scrimmage after practice, which to me is good enough. You know what I mean? I think he's probably going to play. If in fact he plays, I mean, we'll save this for FanDuel. He's almost a lock on FanDuel if you want to think. Yeah. But on DraftKings, he actually is not really looking like that great to play anyway. So if you want to know the truth, for this particular game, on the Indiana side, I'm really not too interested in much. And on the Miami side, I'm really not too interested in much either. If Winslow were out, then we'd have to do all that analysis of those guards again. But I'm really not too interested in this game if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, there's literally I couldn't. If this is catch me, this is the slate where I just don't even want to talk about this game except for what you brought up about Brogdon. Now, here's what I want to say. So what you do is you plan your day on FanDuel as if Brogdon is playing and play him at point guard. And if he's not playing, you just played Aaron Holiday at 4,900, which is too cheap for Aaron Holiday. And actually, that's what I would put the caveat to. If for some reason Brogdon doesn't play, I actually think that Aaron Holiday becomes a terrific play on DraftKings at zero ownership. I know it's a tough matchup, but they're playing at home. He's 5.4, a guy who can easily get you 40 plus here. So just look out for Aaron Holiday if there's no Brogdon. I think Sabonis probably plays. If he doesn't, yes, Miles Turner makes sense from a just logical standpoint. I'm not really sure in this matchup that it's even worth it on this slate. So I'm probably going to be avoiding that this game for the most part. Sure, if I end up on a Turner in that situation, I would definitely play him, but I just don't see it working. I do think this is a good kind of matchup for Turner, even though it seems bad. The thing is, Bam can come out on guys, but he would prefer to beat him up with his size down low. So if there was no Sabonis, I could see Turner getting some open looks from three. I could see Turner getting some cleanups because Bam will over pursue and try and block shots. That's basically what you're hoping for, but mostly this game's a cross-off for me.
Yeah. Now, I guess we go through these. I keep wanting to ask you. So I want to just a little checkbox with every game we look at. Is there any high-owned guys from this game? You know what I mean? Like, I just want to always just kind of touch on these guys.
No.
I don't really see a lot of ownership probably going to come to this game, right?
Zero.
Okay. Next one I have is we're just going to go this way. Is Toronto against Charlotte, and not to, toot our own horn or whatever it is, but we and again, I don't want to just talk about it this way. I want to discuss Chris Boucher in context of discussing players all the time. So yesterday, Chris Boucher was projected not really to be that great a play, but we were talking about it, and we didn't talk that much about it, but he was going to be a low-owned piece on a slate where you were going to get a lot of kind of chalky value. And, he's that type of guy that his median is going to just sometimes just be whatever, but he has so much downside and so much upside that he's a guy that you could put in, either when you want to, differentiate value plays, or you just need a little more juice and upside and variance out of your lineups. Now, again, I don't think I'm going to do it today, but again, just because he's on my board here, I felt the need to bring it up. The other thing I want to bring up in the context of today is that Lowry is projecting to be just about the same as he was yesterday. He's projecting to be a really, really good play. And my view on him is pretty much the same as it was yesterday. He's going to cruise right on in for his 5.2x, and not win anybody anything. But you know what? If you want to play him as part of your lineup where you could get a lot of juice somewhere else, I really have no problem with that, But again, I wouldn't look to Lowry to be the guy to win you the whole slate. I mean, he's projecting at 38 minutes, which is probably what he plays. But again, he's just that kind of safe-ish type play, and I think he rates the same for me at least today. Everybody else in Toronto, I'm really not too interested in today. I would maybe go back to OG Anunoby, but there's a lot of plays on the slate. I don't know if I'm going to go down to him. Patrick McCaw, I don't know how he ended up doing yesterday. I played him a little bit, not to blame you, but on your recommendation, he fit in a lot of good spots for me. I guess he was fine, but
he wasn't there. I mean, it was also that was talking a little bit before some of the other value had opened up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As far as Charlotte goes, projection-wise and whatever value-wise, they're really not looking to be that great a play, any of them. But Devonta Graham, again, he always has that upside. But as I mentioned before, the last show we talked about him, he hasn't really been as aggressive as he had been. But with that said, he's one of this whole group of players, like either Levine, or not that they're the same player, but Levine, Sky, we mentioned pre-show that you said had nothing, like Derrick Rose, like guys that can disappear for like the first half and then just decide to just take it over. And Devontae Graham, I think in his last 2 or 3 games, I think he broke it down by halves or whatever. He gives everybody a heart attack in the first half. He ends that first half with like 6 fantasy points, and then he ends up just getting there somehow. You know what I mean? So you can look at it one of 2 ways. Number one is, is he a guy that's just not going to be active enough in the first half to get that ceiling? Or the other way you could look at it is, God forbid he was active enough in the first half. If he could carry that over, then you could really just smash out of it. So, yeah, it's an impossible matchup. I always say impossible. It's a tough matchup, but, can be I presume he's going to be very low owned. And, if you're looking for these mid-tier guys, like you said, to replace Harden and replace those kind of points, he certainly has the upside to do it.
Yeah, this is a really weird spot with Charlotte. So I'm just going to point out that Kyle Lowry averages more minutes on the second end of the back-to-back than he does on the first, which is shocking. And it's like 39 and a half. This should be a tough game for Toronto on the second night of a back-to-back traveling. Obviously, even internationally, they have to do their whole thing. I love Kyle Lowry tonight. I don't feel the same way that I did yesterday so much. So you have Charlotte, who just is going to give up a million open looks from three. You have Kyle Lowry, who in his last 4 games has shot 53s. That's not an exaggeration. He shot he shot more than that. He shot exactly 53s. So he's shooting more than 12 per game. 12, and 16. He was 7 for 23 yesterday. I feel like we got a little bit lucky. And I also thought Dame really would try and step up and play him, which he did at first, and it wasn't working. Kyle Lowry was 4 for 16 from 3, 6 for 7 for 23 overall, and he put up 48. This spot against Charlotte, I could argue is not necessarily better, but it's sort of the same. And except for the 3-point factor, I just feel like this is a spot where he can get off. And what's great about playing him is I think that you're going to have a lot of ownership, but it's not going to be like 60%. Part of what I was opposed to yesterday was the 30 to 50+% when you had Damian Lillard right there in the same game. Sure, they're both, Toronto's the best team against point guards defensively. It doesn't matter for guys like Dame. And it did seem to matter until the very end, which we just needed more of that from Dame. I think that, Kyle Lowry, and I'll just sum it up, is got to be one of the top plays on the slate. Like, I just feel like he ends up with 50 here almost all the time if the game's close. The weird part for me is how to break down this other stuff, because maybe I watched too much of that Toronto game last night, but I was kind of amazed by how active and how much Brissett got run. That game was tough for a while.
I saw that.
He looked really good. He played 22 minutes. And I think they wanted a little bit more extra size because of mostly it's Whiteside just dominating the board, so they needed some help with the boards. But they could have played Hollis Jefferson, even though he's a little small. And he played actually 25 minutes. I just think he's an interesting flyer to take a look at with Brissett. Like, what if he all of a sudden turns into like we had for the Detroit guy, but he's 3.1K, the Demboyu. What if he suddenly starts getting a few of those minutes tonight, especially on the back-to-back? And Anunoby, these guys played a ton of minutes last night. Maybe he gets a little extra run. Look, if you're playing a bunch of tournaments, that's the only time you're going to consider him. But he's definitely don't be surprised if he plays 24 minutes and puts up 30 fantasy points. That's absolutely in the realm of possibility. And the thing with Boucher is this guy is a fantasy point monster. I just don't know if he's ever going to get above these minutes. And it drives me nuts because this guy would be like one of the – I mean, he's a stud. If he was given the right situation and really let go, he's going to be one of the best fantasy point per minute guys in the NBA. Like, he's incredible. He can do everything. He'll foul out maybe in 16 minutes, but he'll get 5 blocks and he'll do everything. I just don't think I'm going to end up getting to him tonight, but I do think that Lowry – and then I think it's an interesting, speculative play on Brissett. That's my Toronto interest. And then, I mean, I don't think that you do anything with Charlotte tonight. I really think it would be a mistake. The positions they guard the best, you have Devontae Graham you can always play, sure. I just don't like this matchup for him. I think it matters a lot more for him than it does for a guy like Dame Lillard. And then you have Rozier sort of in a similar thing. Like, I don't know who's going to end up specifically guarding who, but they do a good job with these guards. So I think I'm going to stay away from Charlotte on this big slate.
Two responses to what you said. First of all, the one ownership run I'm looking at from one site actually has Kyle Lowry at 11%. If in fact that's the case, then LFG, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other thing I would ask you about is, again, they're going to seem kind of tempting just because, but both Cody Zeller and Bismack Biyombo are 4,100. Again, just because they're so cheap, I just figured people are going to take a look at them. I never know what to do with these guys. I'm probably not going to get to them today, but that was literally my only other thought on this game.
Yeah, I totally thought about them. If I was going to play them, it'd be a spot where they were forced to match up with someone bigger or something, and that's certainly not the case against Toronto tonight.
Okay. All right, so let's get to Washington, Orlando. So we're you're going to get this news, so that's the good news about Bradley Beal. I just have to presume he keeps being out until further notice, I suppose. But you got to be prepared. I am once again. I'm going to repeat what I said. I am not going to play him. Whatever his first game back is, I'm just not going to do it. And I know that I'm going to be giving him up at possible upside and ownership and things like that, and low ownership. But unless I have no other options that are also low owned, I'm probably just not going to do it. So just right off the bat, I don't think I'm going to play him if he plays. And unfortunately, not fortunate, if he doesn't play, I guess just Jordan McRae is just like a lock every freaking game. I mean, the guy they never move his price up, I guess, because they just presume Beal's going to be back one of these days. And he just shoots the ball and he rebounds the ball and he drives the ball. I mean, the guys are freaking insane. So I want to make sure I don't go have dinner into lock as I did a couple nights ago. I have to be around for this because if Beal's announced out, I mean, I wouldn't say a lock, whatever. McRae's going to project to be just an incredible play, and I'm sure he's going to be highly owned, but I'm going to have to certainly think about playing him. And then, what do you do? I mean, Ish Smith again, Troy Brown, Isaiah Thomas, AP, again, Ian Mahinmi. I mean, he smashed within the first 6 minutes of the game. You go to him. I probably won't because of the matchup. And because of the matchup, again, I don't want to double state the same thing. Because of the matchup, that's why he's not going to project so well. So that's the first thing I would say is that if Beal's out, I mean, McRae is just going to just look like a lock again. People are going to own him and they're going to play him. And I'm probably going to have some of them. Every time I try to fade him, I'm just freaking petrified. He just racks up fantasy points in an incredible volume. And whether he starts, doesn't start, whatever, he's going to play 36 minutes plus, and he's just the man right now. What can I tell you? Now, with that said, again, he's playing Orlando, which is probably the biggest pace down matchup they could come up with for them. But that's kind of all factored into the projections and all factored in everything else. So that's all I got from Washington. Orlando, this should come as no surprise that Vooch is going to project to be a pretty good play. He's not projecting to be that great a play, but so he's projecting to be a good play, which you might imagine because Washington, can't really defend bigs that well. So he's going to look to be pretty good. Again, you're going to have to talk me into playing him as a real high upside play because I've been playing him and I see that he's going to get his 45, he's going to get whatever. You just have to talk me into him because when a team is playing Washington, we talk about this. We have to think about which guys are going to benefit the most from that extra pace. So the first guy that I would look at as far as that is concerned is probably someone like Aaron Gordon on Orlando. He's, again, not projecting all that great, but I think that is probably an underprojected thing as far as the actual increase that he's going to get, especially with the upside part of it. Fournier, he always is going to look pretty good. So I would probably only use Fournier, though, in kind of a stack because, again, on his own, he doesn't really just light up the board all that much. And I think they priced up Augustine to a point where I don't think I'm going to play him. And that's pretty much what I got. I was expecting, like all Washington games, to have more of this. But, aside from being kind of forced into playing McRae when Beal is out, I don't know what I'm going to really do here. It's not as exciting a game as I thought it might be.
Yeah, just to start with Washington, for me, I prefer McRae on FanDuel. I don't know that I'm going to end up even with that much of him on Draftkings regardless.
Okay.
Like always, is on FanDuel especially, I will play Bradley Beal if he's playing.
Mm-hmm.
He's 7.9 on FanDuel. I'm just not giving that up. I mean, why are we going to assume he plays? The only guy in Washington I would really consider would be Mahimi just because of the size. But then again, you could use the other guy, Pizexness, whatever. I don't know. I'm not really that into it. I do love Vooch. I love I think Fournier makes sense, but like just from a matchup perspective, but I just don't think I'm going to end up with that much of him. I think that Aaron Gordon, like it's weird. I was watching the last game. Aaron Gordon had like 27 at halftime. He ends up with 32. Aaron Gordon this matchup should suit him. Like I like him. He's high on my list, but I don't feel good about it. This guy has just been flatting out at these same numbers every day. Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at, and I don't mind a sprinkle of any of the other guys for mass multi-entering, but I don't think you want to prioritize them. Like Fultz is a fine play. Terrence Ross even is worth a flyer, but like just on this slate, I just don't think you need to get there, even though it is a great matchup against Washington, and I fully expect one of these guys to have a game. Even Awundu at no cost, like could easily sneak his way into a 25-plus point game. So everybody's in play, but nobody overly excites me except for I do really like Vooch. And I do like Gordon too.
Okay. So next game, San Antonio, Boston. The only thing I would like to say is Tice is questionable, and if in fact, and it's also first game of a back-to-back. If in fact that he is out, I presume Cantor is going to pop as a really, really good play. The other thing I would say is, I think you might like this. I think I kind of want to pass on this game. Nobody really came out to be such a great play. And if no one's a great play for me on either side, I don't really want to stack it. And especially with Kemba back, I presume Kemba's going to be back. Maybe he's not back, but I'm assuming he's in for now. I'm just not too thrilled about anybody from this game. So I know you want to, every once in a while you're like, Sheets, we should just get moving already. This could be a game where I could just get moving.
Yeah, I'm basically with you. I think that I would. I mean, if Kemba was still out, I would play Marcus Smart again. And then on the other side, I don't want to just slough it off. I think DeJounte Murray is a strong play. The minutes in the last game were weird because of the blowout, and he looked like he was going to be getting more of them. They moved him back in the starting lineup. I think DeJounte Murray is firmly in play, and these prices on the other guys are certainly kind of interesting, but I think that this is a bad spot for them. Off the back-to-back, the big win last night against Milwaukee at home, it worries me a little bit for who's going to even get all the run here. So I think that it's just probably a stay away, like you said. But I think that DeJounte Murray is one guy who I think you can firmly put in play.
Okay.
Assuming he plays. You never know what's going to happen. You get popped all of a sudden. Okay. Let's move on to the one.
So Houston and Atlanta, and kudos to Houston to DraftKings. I'm sorry for factoring in that Westbrook is going to be out and pricing Harden up to 12.8. And with that said, he's projecting to be just kind of a monster performer today, which you would expect. I mean, with Westbrook out, with them playing Atlanta in basically the nut matchup, plus the fact that it's on the road and with Westbrook out, which mitigates the blowout risk just a little bit. I mean, I would say more than a little bit. So they're projecting him at 36, 37 minutes or whatever. First of all, even if the game does get out of hand, I think the combination of the fact that Harden's contribution to him getting out of hand, plus the fact that Harden doesn't exactly sit as much as you might think he would anyway. I think Harden is really, really, really tough to fade on the surface. Okay, now that's not talking about in context of the slate, in context of ownership, but even at 12.8 on DraftKings, he's projecting to be a good quote unquote value. You know what I mean? Like everything just kind of lines up for him to have a great game. Now, with that said, you know what I mean? He is priced. Now, when I say priced for perfection, he's going to be owned for perfection. I mean, people are going to own him here too. So you're going to have to make that determination of whether to spend 12.8 if there are enough options that you're foregoing that you might think about replacing Harden with. You know what I mean? So look, on the surface, it is a really, really good play. For me to say otherwise would be disingenuous. Second of all, on the Houston side, which makes it a little interesting, is that other guys look good too. So Capella looks to be a really, really good play. PJ Tucker looks to be the same frustrating good play that he tends to be sometimes. And then you can go to guys like Gordon and House. So the reason I bring it up is, how many Rockets guys can you play in a GPP knowing that Harden's going to take up so much of that usage? You know what I mean? So that is something you're going to have to think about as far as GPPs go. Then what makes it kind of even more frustrating, not frustrating, is there's such an incredibly natural run back on the other side in this game, okay? Because, Trae Young, he's projecting to be a really, really good play. And, this is just your perfect classic, mini stack to play. You know what I mean? To play Harden and to play Trae. And I think that whatever the ownership is between Trae and Harden, I also feel as though that the combination of the two of them is going to be pretty highly owned also. I think people are going to naturally do this. They're going to play Harden and they're going to play Trae alongside of him. So I think that the ownership, like if you look at Trae as whatever owned he's going to be, I think that if you multiplied Harden plus Trae, I think that you actually get more ownership on the two of them together, especially with the other value that you could play on this slate. So it is going to be – it's a very natural mini stack to make. I'm not saying it's bad. I will say I think it's going to be decently owned. So I would exercise a little caution just blindly going to it. How about that?
I agree. I don't think this is going to be – I'm trying to avoid this spot a little bit. Kevin Huerter has been really, really, really incredibly good. I don't think that he's going to keep shooting the way he's shooting, but if he keeps shooting like this, it's going to take away a little bit from Trae. I don't think Trae is I think he's a good play. I don't think this is a spot where if the ownership's really high on that combination, which I think it will be also, that you necessarily need to get involved. I personally think the people I have the most interest in this game are Clint Capella. And then I'm debating with Eric Gordon. I don't feel great about it, but the fact that, he's getting 10 shots, 10 threes while Westbrook's on the court, imagine without him, the shots have to go somewhere. The usage has to go somewhere other than just Harden. Even if they're going to trap him, there's going to be open looks for guys like PJ Tucker, so his stock goes up a little bit because you're going to get a few extra open threes. It wouldn't shock me if Ben McLemore ate up some minutes and actually played well. It's hard to know where to go. For me, I think mostly I probably am going to be a little bit below the field on Harden. Just I think the ownership's going to be crazy, and I don't think you need to do it on this slate. But obviously it looks like a great play. I just think there's other ways to go, and I don't think playing a guy when you need 70 is always something I can avoid if I need to. So
well, the good thing is that we won't have to wait long in our review to get to the game that makes the Harden decision interesting. You know what I mean? Because I mean we're going to get to Luka in a second, and it's a very legitimate comparison and decision of whether to take lower ownership on Luka as opposed to Harden and what you're giving up. Because I mean I hate to put them back to back, but you have Harden with the nut matchup and apparently Luka with the anti-nut matchup, right? But that's all going to be factored into the ownership, and if Harden does, I hate to cop out with every play saying it really depends on ownership, but in a way it does. And if you see Harden really drift up to, I don't know, 40%, something like that, and you feel that you can get a Luka at, I don't know, 15, 12, I don't know. Maybe it's worth taking a shot that Harden just doesn't get 100. You know what I mean? Keep in mind that this is a salary cap sport, right?
Yeah.
So if you're playing guys and you got a lot of guys to choose from today, and Harden, if you fade Harden and he puts up 75 points, for example, okay, you on the surface, whoa, crap, the guy got 75 points, how am I going to make it up? But he did use 12-8 salary to do it. You know what I mean? So as long as you feel as though you can, and we talked about this before, is that, you just need to get two guys to get the same 6X at, 6,700 or whatever it is to make up for the fact that Harden, got the 70, 75 points or whatever.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he's a pretty good player, though, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, he is. And I don't even know that, like, for me, the way I look at these things usually is, do I play? It's not, I don't look at him or Luka. I look at, can I fit them both, or can I play neither of them?
You can play, you'll see when we do the video on FanDuel, you could play like everybody on FanDuel.
I know. FanDuel is going to be fun.
You can play both of them, and you might be able to play Giannis also.
Yeah, and maybe if you are going to play those two guys, like, include – I think you could actually play Eric Gordon also, because the pace should be good enough. I think you could throw in PJ Tucker at lower ownership than some of the other guys, even though.
What about your man? What about other guys from Atlanta? What about going back to DeAndre Hunter?
Or I think DeAndre Hunter. I don't think I want to get him at this price. I mean, you will get zero ownership on him. I like the way he's playing, but like that's a lot to ask for this price in this slate. So not really going to do it here. But I think that I think John Collins. Maybe, I mean, look, Hunter's not the worst player in the world at all, but I just think that you're talking about a lot like this guy was 3.9 and 1% owned the other day. Let's not get crazy, right. At 5K. Right. All right. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the Luka game, I guess. All right.
Okay. So the Luka game is, I don't know so much about the Luka game, but it's probably the Michael Porter game, right? So let's talk about this. So first of all, from the Denver side, what's his name? Will Barton has been ruled out. So you could underthink this or overthink this or whatever it is, but Michael Porter Jr. is going to pop as a really, really good value, especially if he starts. But I think even if he doesn't, okay, he's 3,800 and he's going to take those, a decent amount of those minutes, and he's going to look like a really, really good play, and he's going to be highly owned. Like right now, he's looking to be the highest owned play on the slate. And a couple of things. One thing I neglected, I didn't finish my thought when we were talking about taking high-owned guys so you can get to get other high-owned guys. Mm-hmm. So again, this is where it's double, because Porter is not only going to be good value in and of itself, but he's going to be such a need or so helpful to get Harden or Luka or both of them in that he's going to get even more ownership because of the way construction is going to work. You know what I mean? So I feel as though as a play, he would be popular anyway, and because of what he does to the rest of the builds, he's going to be even kind of double popular. So does that mean he's going to be over-owned? I don't know what your definition of over is, but he's certainly going to be extremely popular. Now, can he fail? All right, so let's talk about this. I've been hearing takes, and you can, whatever. I will do a little more research on it, but when two completely different, unrelated people said the same thing, I'm going to think about it, is the last couple of times, or they played in this matchup, or whenever Denver plays something like this, is Torrey Craig, they like to play him to guard guys like Luka, okay? And I don't know how much, if any, that's going to impact Michael Porter Jr.'s minutes. Again, so I'm not saying that, first of all, that you necessarily have to play Torrey Craig, because even though he's going to get those minutes, he really just doesn't do a lot. He'll be saying, listen, go guard Luka. If you even touch the ball, I don't even care. You know what I mean? So that would be one way I could consider Michael Porter Jr. just either not getting the minutes or failing. But I think the combination of the opportunity plus the coach speak, you know what I mean, that they wanted to play him a lot, it's kind of difficult to keep him off the court for, 20 – he's got to be on the court for 24 minutes. He just is, at least. And he's kind of I think he's going to be a tough fade. But I don't know. I think that it warrants some look. Aside from him, I've learned to never say no to Jokic at 0% ownership. So I'm going to think about him. He's not projecting me that great, but he's not projecting me that much worse than someone like Vooch, if you want to know the truth. So at low ownership, I'll think about it. I'm probably going to be a sucker and not end up doing it again. So on Dallas, the good news is I don't really like anybody on Dallas except for possibly playing Luka. I don't want to none of these other guys look to be that great, so I really wouldn't go to them. I will say, by the way, I know you don't like playing him, but, I was all ready to play Tim Hardaway Jr. in the last game, but I heard there was a minutes restriction. He ended up getting 25 fantasy points in about 30 seconds of play, all right? So what's that?
What did he end up with?
Like 26 points or something like that. I'm telling you.
I thought you said in 30 seconds of play. Oh,
No,
yeah.
I was joking. You know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
right. I mean, but he, what did he shoot? I mean, he shot. I forgot what it was. Yeah, 22 minutes. He had 26 fantasy points, but it was, he was 3 for 4 from 3. Obviously, that's not going to happen a lot. But he is still only 4,400, so I'll just keep an eye on him. But again, it's a question of Luka. Like Luka, he's projected to be, decent, between 60, 65 fantasy points. A tough matchup, but he's becoming kind of matchup proof. But Denver, they like to do funny, like to do stuff to shut guys like this down. And I think they gave him a hard time, whether it was the last game they played or 2 times ago or whatever it is. I do think they gave him a hard time. So there's a reason why he's going to be much lower owned than Harden. And it's, I think, a very, very interesting decision of whether his probability of exceeding Harden is great enough to justify, obviously taking him at much lower ownership. So I really wonder what you think about this, because in and of itself, he doesn't look like that great a play. But if you're going to fade Harden, you have to either, right, play him or, like we was talking about, play a combination of good mid-range guys. So I'm curious where you come out on Luka today.
Yeah, it's a tricky him versus Harden with no Westbrook situation, because I think Harden scores like 40+ real life fantasy points here, real life basketball points here more often than not.
And what about the second half?
Yeah, exactly. And then the game's over at halftime. That is an interesting. I mean, like, there's a lot of weird ways that things could play. Obviously, this is the thing, because of the situation in Denver, and I'm really worried about this because there's still a lot of bodies on this team. That's one thing they don't have a shortage of, is bodies. But I really think I want to give the uptick to Porter. I believe in the talent. I love what Barton being out is going to do for Jamal Murray and Jokic. So I am extremely interested in this game and getting like after it. Right now, I currently have 4 players from Denver at 30% in my script. And that might be a little bit high. Oh, 30+%. I mean, Porter, I have higher than that. I have Porter at 45. Harris, I understand people's skepticism. I just think losing somebody who hogs the ball like Barton does, and I mean, not in a bad way, just provides enough scoring, it's going to offer guys like Harris, Millsap, Porter, Jokic, Murray just so much more offensive load. And I think this game should be competitive. It's a tough matchup. It's a not exactly a symbolic matchup, but you have 2 of the best teams in the NBA playing here. Two of the best in the West, or at least what they see as themselves as the best in the West. I think that they get up for this game. I really like every part of the Denver side of it, and I'm really struggling with the Dallas side because it is hard for me to just click the button on Luka, although I do have him in my script. Like, don't get me wrong, I want to play him. But part of why I want to play him is because I love the other side of this game so much. And as the one thing I would say about the Torrey Craig thing, I think people are really reaching. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. This sounds like information from last year to me. They just played Atlanta, and Torrey Craig played 0 minutes. The DNP coach's decision against Houston is the only game that he played any significant minutes. They faced about 19 teams with good shooting guards and point guards, and he didn't guard any of them. So I don't understand why Gary Harris, who's a much better defender, wouldn't just be the logical choice to guard him, considering he plays 35 minutes a game anyway. It's not a good matchup from that perspective for Luka. I don't think it matters that much for Luka. It does feel weird to just prioritize him over Harden at the same price. If you can try and get them both, that's really interesting. It's going to be probably weird, but I want something. I want some. You just
can't. I mean, just look at this for just a second. I mean, I know there's more to this than 3 players, but let's say we're not even spending on Luka, right? Let's say that you just wanted to play Trae Young and Harden, okay? Just the 2 of them. The classic stack, whatever. And then let's say that you even felt that Porter was kind of a lock and you put him in. You have you have a chalk 3 right off the bat. What are you going to do to get upside with low ownership? Because you're going to need ownership. You're going to need low ownership if you're going to start with this 3 stuff at $4,700 a player. You know what I mean? It's going to be very, very difficult, I think.
I don't think so, because you play Gordon. Then what you do is you could also, I mean, if you're going to make that, then why not just go for the stack? Play Gordon, Tucker in the game, and then you also play what's his name, Josh Hart. I mean, this is assuming other value doesn't open, or you play Daniel House. from that game also. All these are cheap guys that the ownership will be spread on. Then you get a full game stack. And I mean, you've got Gary Harris at 4K. You can take a shot on Jeremy Grant or Wes Iwundu at 3.3 and DiVincenzo at 4.2. Like, all these guys are not like exciting plays, but you could definitely do it if you wanted to go that route.
I mean, I'm looking at Josh Hart at 25%. I'm looking at Tucker at 25%.
We'll see if Josh Hart ends up at 25% after the other night.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. All right. So how would you rank? So on the Denver side, so would you go all the way up to Jokic or no?
I love Jokic. He's been absolutely terrific even before that other game lately. He's just in real life. I know he had some down numbers games, but I think that overall the shot attempts, since the very beginning of the season are up. He's in better shape than he was. I think that without Barton, they're going to need some more of his offense. I think though that I prefer Murray over Jokic. I really like Jamal Murray tonight. This feels like a spot where Jamal Murray goes a little bit off. He also really gets into these competitive situations against other top guards. So take out Barton's usage. I just feel like Jamal Murray is the guy you want to take a shot at here. And again, Gary Harris at his price, especially if you're game stacking, and then Porter are both just look. What's weird is that Gary Harris is actually the safer play for cash games. I know that sounds really weird. Gary Harris is going to put up mid-20s in fantasy points tonight by accident. I really believe that. So based on that, I think I actually need to get more Gary Harris because no one's going to play him. They never do.
Yeah, this is an interesting attack, because I think that a lot of people are going to play those Houston guys, maybe the Denver guys. I think the Denver guys, aside from Porter, like I said, if you could get Harris, and you'll get him at low ownership, and if you could get him to have a game, you're gonna have first of all, you're gonna have natural pivots off of Porter. I mean, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. This could be an interesting way to go. I didn't even think about this.
I think it is an interesting way to go for sure.
Okay. All right. Anything else from Dallas? You're not into Tim Hardaway? No.
No. I mean,
that sounds good.
Yeah, not for me.
Okay. All right. So you told me a week ago that you're gonna have Chicago at New Orleans. I'm like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? I don't care how big of a slate is. Let's freaking just stack the game and be done with it. So let's see. Oh man, they're not nice. Making Levine 9K now or 8,900. What else do they do? Ooh, Wendell Carter Jr. So I played him at center the other day, and he left with an injury. Wonder if I can get my revenge here. So he's going to be out today. So what does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is that Lauri Markkanen is probably going to get more rebounds. He's going to do better. You want to go back to Thad Young, he's probably going to get some minutes. Or if you wanted to get really nasty, you can go to Daniel Gafford. But none of these guys are projecting to be all that great. I'm trying to find some excuse to play this game because, anytime you're playing against New Orleans, you're trying to find an excuse to play the game. So let's presume that I don't know any better. Let's just say that I want to play Zach LaVine anyway, just because I'm stubborn. It's kind of like automatically put in my lineups, right? So it is a big ask at 8,900, I have to say, to get what you need to get, all right? But, it's a fast-paced game. I'm never going to put it past them. So all those Chicago guys in a stack or whatever, if I feel like it, again, I'm just telling you in advance, I'm just going to do it anyway in a couple lineups.
Sure, me too.
Yeah. And the other guy I might throw in just for S's and giggles is maybe Kobe White. You know what I mean? Just let's just see what happens. So on the New Orleans side, as you indicated, with Drew Holiday out, there's going to be obviously naturally minutes and usage to be had. The first three guys that, at least for now, are popping that I like are Ingram, Hart, and Favors. But you can go make cases for these other guys. You can make cases for Redick. You could always make a case for Lonzo Ball, even Etuan Moore, and while Josh Hart, like you said, is going to be right now is looking at 25%, as you so eloquently put it, let's see if they really make him 25% after his performance the other day, which I forgot exactly. Was it foul trouble that he got out? I don't know exactly what ended up happening, but a lot of people, including me, needed him to do better. Like if you tell me that you were going to be in a game with Utah with 254 points, you know what I mean? I would kind of expect to get more than 14 fantasy points out of my players. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
He's going to – I don't know whether he's going to start. I presume he's going to start. But even if he doesn't, he's going to project to be a really good play. I'm going to try it. I just am. I haven't found a game I want to stack anyway. I am going to try it. I'm going to try some Ingram. I'm going to try some Hart. I'm going to try some Ball. I'll try to mix and match. I'll run it back to Chicago guys. This whole thing is going to project to be a disaster. But you know what? Life is short. You know what I mean? It's a close spread. I just know what I saw. I know what happens when New Orleans kind of ramps it up, and Chicago can ramp it up if need be. And I'll probably take a shot. But again, with full disclosure, none of these guys in and of themselves are going to look to be that great plays. But I just know the way these teams play, and I know where my usage is coming from, at least on the Chicago side of things. And I'm gonna probably try it.
Yeah, I have a funny play for this game that's a little bit off. I mean, I guess it's not off the board, but it's the guy who I really like is Chris Dunn. I think that this game environment is perfect for him, and he doesn't, shoot the ball a lot, so he has to get his points different other ways. His assist numbers have been really good lately. Now, he got in foul trouble because he's their best defender. He's actually one of the best defensive guards in the NBA, and he was on Luka the other night. People don't realize this about Chicago. I make these comments all the time, and everybody just says, oh, Chris Dunn and Levine bit defense. Oh, this. And I'm like, this team is third best against perimeter players in the NBA, which makes what even Luka did the other night even more that spectacular, that 37, 11, and 10 game. But if you look at the numbers of games he hasn't been in foul trouble just recently, which has really been only the three games with 30 minutes, he only had 18 against Atlanta. He only had 23 against Utah. He had 34 against Boston. This is a good pace. I'm willing to take the shot on him at 4.7. I think that he actually gets I think he's almost always between 25 and 35 here, and I think there's upside on that potentially. So I think he's kind of interesting. I also am curious to see what they do with Daniel Gafford. I know that they did a really good job hiking the price up on him, but if he's going to play, 28 minutes, which based on how many minutes he played against a smaller Dallas team after Carter went out, and even partly while Carter was in. Now, I know he made all of his shots and he had 8 rebounds. You can't necessarily expect that in the same exact production in the minutes. But what if the minutes go up? And in this matchup, a double-double seems like it should be in the realm of possibility. So he would actually be the other guy I'm looking at. And then the other one you mentioned was Kobe White. Because I'm not as interested in each of these guys individually, sure, for stacks, Zach LaVine, Laurie makes sense, both playing well. But I think you want to try and get cheap exposure to a great environment. Kobe White might be in there for no time, but if he makes 6 threes or 7 threes again in the quarter, he's still going to stay in the game and he's going to put up 45 fantasy points. He's just a good wild card play. But again, you're right. It's hard to love these guys. They did a good job pricing them. I do like Josh Hart. I do like Lonzo quite a bit. I think that I don't know if I'm going to end up playing a ton of him, but if you're doing one of those middling builds, you're not using the big guys. I think Lonzo is definitely high on the list. What's been happening from him lately is very real. Not to say that he won't have a bad game here and there, but he has been spectacular, and he is going to keep being very, very good. I don't know if it'll always be spectacular. And most of those games were with Drew Holiday, by the way, and Drew Holiday is not here. So I love Lonzo, and I love Brandon Ingram. I just feel like the price is another one of those guys if you're going balance build. I just feel like he can get 50 in his sleep against this team. The rebound numbers should be really good for everybody. I'm probably not going to get to Favors at 7.3, but I really like that. I like the New Orleans side better than Chicago, which doesn't feel good because we should be wanting to attack New Orleans defense more than Chicago's. But on the Chicago side, the only guy who I'm really making a priority out of stacks is Chris Dunn with a tiny sprinkling of Kobe White.
So here's the thing. I put this lineup together just for a reason. So the reason why I did this just like this is when you think about guys like Michael Porter, for example, and let's just say that he's projecting to start. Let's just say that the coach says they're going to play him 26 minutes, and let's say he's 50% owned, and let's say he's 60% owned. When you think of playing guys like that, remember that they can, even though they might be kind of fishy chalk or whatever, you could fit them in high ownership in lineups that are going to be 2% owned. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry too much about it. Like if you played something like this and like faded Porter because, I didn't want to play a 60% owned Porter. I mean, you're doing it wrong. I mean, remember, you got to look at your lineup in combination of what that ownership is, not just kind of, boy, Porter is 70, 60%. Screw him. He's not going to get there that often. But you know what? You don't need to be that cavalier about your opinions if the rest of your lineup is going to be just so crazy that if that hits, you don't want some chalk guy to get there where you don't have him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. With that, you ready to move on?
Yeah, hold on a minute. Just for fun.
What you doing?
Yeah, we gotta put this in. All right, see, this is probably a sign. Like DraftKings is actually like freezing, like not letting me put it in. Okay, so that should have been a sign that it doesn't want me to. That's okay. All right. What's the next game?
We've got New York and Utah.
Okay. Oh, good. So New York and Utah. So last night's game was kind of funny. Just to reiterate what happened yesterday with the Knicks. We got all the way to the end of the slate, and we just finished the Harry Giles, and I made this big deal about putting up, Reggie Bullock going back to LA. Maybe they'll give him minutes or whatever it is. Not really as a joke. I'm like, I thought that was a really good chance to be a 0% owned play that nobody would play. And within like 15 minutes, Marcus Morris was ruled out. And then so he picked up some momentum. He ended up going up like 15% owned or something like that.
But he was like 28% owned in the
what's that?
He was like 28% owned.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
And I also thought he'd be an interesting pivot off of what I thought would be a chalky Knox. And nobody played Knox, and Knox didn't get there either. You know what I mean? And I think actually the winning lineup in one of the tournaments actually had Knox in it with 8 points. So it was a very strange night in New York, actually in LA. And they sat Randall for the last like 7-8 minutes, where I thought they kind of let him roll a little bit because that game was kind of a little bit out of hand, I think. So New York and Utah, I hate to do this to you, but I just kind of not interested. I think that this game is, and I don't want to predict blowouts, but this game's going to be a disaster. It just is. I mean, Knicks going from LA to Utah, back-to-back games, they're just going to get rolled. And I don't want to try to pick whether it's Kadeem Allen that gets run or anybody from the Knicks side, or going back to Trier or back to Bullock or back to any of this stuff. I don't think Randall, coming off of the LA game, which he probably doesn't have it on his schedule, is going to be particularly excited about this back-to-back in Utah either. So I'm not too interested in him. And with that said, I mean, the Utah side of things, look, the top 3 or 4 guys are going to look to be okay because they're playing the Knicks: Gobert, Mitchell, Bojan, Ingles, whatever. But they're projecting Mitchell for 34 minutes and Gobert 34 minutes. I really think all that is his downside from there. So I'm probably going to just kind of hope this game just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I feel like if you wind up on one of these Utah guys, I wouldn't feel bad about it. I think the savvy play, if you're going to try to make an argument for anyone in this game, it would be Jordan Clarkson and Emmanuel Mudiay playing sort of more the blowout angle, and they could both get hot against this kind of a team, and they'll both keep chucking. You got Mudiay against this former team. It doesn't really matter. I'm not talking about just narrative. It's just 3.3 could end up with 20-plus minutes. And then Clarkson, we just know he's like a little microwave, and if he gets going. But, yeah, it just feels like a game you don't really want to pay attention to.
Okay.
So
this kind of hit me about midway through this slate review.
Giannis is playing? Is that what it was?
Something like that. What hit me was that I would say about 60% of the brain power is going to be of this slate is going to be trying to figure out whether to play Harden or to play Luka or to play both. Okay? And I think 0% of the brain power is going to be spent saying, screw all of them. Let's just drink and take Giannis at no percent ownership because of the blowout, right? I'd say no percent, but look, they're going to he's a zillion point spread against like the worst team in basketball. And it's at 10 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be so low owned. He's projecting to be, okay. He's projecting to be just fine. They're projecting him at 30 minutes. Is this game going to blow out? Maybe. But who knows? I mean, I will say this, is that if, and I'll tell you the story in a minute, but if it's 10:30 and you have these results in with, oh boy, I got 80 points out of Harden, man, I am stoked. You know, or I got 70 points out of Luka fading Harden, ship the money. You know what I mean? You know, you got to hold off on that those shipments for just a little bit more longer, okay? Because the last thing that you need to start off this game is for Golden State to be up like 10-0, okay? When Golden State's up 10-0, then Giannis is going to get 80 points in this game. So it's I am completely on board with playing some Giannis here. The other thing I would say about the Milwaukee side is, again, kind of an interesting pivot is maybe going Dante DiVincenzo at 4,200 as opposed to somebody like Josh Hart or somebody like that. Mm-hmm. So he's another guy I had as possible. Probably not going to play Bledsoe or Middleton as usual. Mm-hmm. And on Golden State, Draymond, 5,900, projecting to be an okay play with the upside that he has. I presume he's playing. He hasn't done anything great in a while, and he's certainly busted his chalk for me when he got, did he get hurt or something in that game or something like that? Yeah. But, I'm kind of interested in having some Giannis and Draymond Green, to sweat towards the end of the day. I think that's not the worst idea in the world.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same page with you. I do think Giannis is a really interesting tournament play, and I'm actually excited to do the FanDuel show with you after this because it's going to be funny to watch. How many guys we can fit in. But anyway, I like the idea of playing Giannis here. I mean, one thing that may help in this situation, they did play a tough game and they got smoked last night by San Antonio. Probably not a great sign for Golden State tonight, but still on the road, traveling. Maybe the game stays a little bit closer, or maybe they just punish him early. I'm having trouble deciding which. I think that if you're going to run it back, though, which I think you probably kind of want to try if you're going to play Giannis, I think it's, it's taking a shot on Draymond, Willie Cauley-Stein. I think he's interesting. And I also think maybe you can throw in Alec Burks and try and take a shot at just, a guy who just goes off. They get up a lot of threes in Milwaukee. That's sort of basically all I got for you on that one. Or Eric Pascal at 4K and hope that Draymond doesn't play the minutes. And it just doesn't feel great, but I don't mind having like a little bit of action there. And I really do think Giannis is one of the better tournament plays. Like, we're not going to see him at the ownership he's at tonight on DraftKings, especially, like, ever. Hardly ever. And why can't he just purely outscore both those other guys anytime? That's just my answer. Like, he's cheaper and he could easily outscore them, and you have a different build.
So I spend very little time on New York, Utah, spend very little time on the other games. So I've afforded myself a 3-minute story. Okay. So I used to bet sports back in the day, like a long time ago. And this goes back to even before there was, real-time updates on ESPN. You had to call in for results. For those of you that are old enough to remember this, there was actually a phone number you called in that got you updates every 10 minutes or so. And I say this as prelude to these late-night hammer-type games. So there was always these 10:30 p.m. games that were always these West Coast high-scoring games between, like, the Warriors, the Nuggets, teams like that. Let me tell you the way sports betting, like, can affect you in, like, a really, really terrible way. Like, there was one game where I remember this distinctly. I had something like Golden State over Phoenix, which was always that type of high-scoring game. And I had Golden State minus 4 points. And at the end of the first quarter, they were up 31, okay? And then I kept calling for results, and at the end of the half, they were up 37. And then at the end of the third quarter, I called up, and they were up 40. And then I called again at 6 minutes to go in the game. They were up 45. And this is now 12:30 at night. I just want to go to sleep, and I fell asleep. I woke up at 2:45 in the morning. Now, I say this for a reason. I actually was worried about the results and had to call at 3 o'clock in the morning just to make sure they didn't give up the 46-point lead, okay? That's what sweating these things will do to you. And if you fade a Giannis or a Lillard or somebody like that in the late-night game, you are going to have to check to make sure that these guys aren't lurking when you're like in first place and boy, where is everybody in the lineups? You're gonna have to wait and you're gonna have to sweat and make sure that all those Giannis lineups, all 2 of them, are not just kind of just coming up that leaderboard.
I'm with you, man. That's a pretty funny story, though. All right, man. With that, I guess we'll call that the final thoughts. We're about to get to the FanDuel video, so we want to get this one uploaded for you guys.
One quick thing. Could you go through your ownerships again?
Yeah, let's go through my ownerships real quick. That's our tradition here. So let me see. I've got basically my, higher level tier, not a higher level tier, but the highest owned. Michael Porter, Kyle Lowry, I have as the 2 highest owned players right now. Just behind them, and again, this is going to change by the end of the day, I'm sure. We have Jamal Murray, Clint Capella, Vucevic, Jokic, basically a 3-way tie between Doncic, Harden, and Giannis. Trying to figure that one out because I think Giannis is the best tournament play, but it's just so hard for me to think he outscores both of them, but it's very doable. Anyway, so I'm struggling with that. And then I've got, a bunch of the Houston, Daniel House, we've got Gary Harris from Denver. I've got PJ Tucker, Lonzo Ball. These are guys that are more in the 25% range, and I'm going to firm it up a little bit later. I have John Collins as a part of a potential stack in that other game. I think I mentioned Clint Capella, Josh Hart, sort of the guys we talked about. But I'm going to absolutely have to fine-tune it because what I think I'm going to end up with is a Lowry, Nuggets, Dallas sort of situation, and maybe not playing Luka, which is kind of weird, but that's sort of.
I think that I it's funny. That's what I was going to say. We were going through that game. That there's certainly nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, because again, like Luka, you know what I mean? Like let Luka get his 70 points and just eat that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Luka gets 60 points and Giannis gets 60, and I somehow play Giannis with these guys. That I save $900, and I have a different build.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think that's kind of an interesting way to go. Anyway, guys, we'll be right back with you guys for the FanDuel show. And thanks for tuning in. Give us the like, subscribe, all that stuff. Tell your friends, and we will answer any questions we can on Twitter or on these YouTube messages a little later. Talk to you soon.
And I throw this out there again. I just every once in a while I ask you, Bobby, but everybody's now watching. What if I just like went on YouTube Live or whatever, Twitch or whatever, and just decided to do it at 6 o'clock or whatever it is? I mean, would people want to go and watch? You know what I mean? Would people want me to sweat me doing my lineups and take questions or whatever it is? Because, like you said, I mean, yes, I know there's other content out there. Look, I'm realistic. I know some people want to watch other things or whatever it is, but we'll do it if there's an interest. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
People definitely expressed interest. We haven't figured out an exact timing spot that would be good yet, but we will find it. Guys, let us know what's good for you if you have a chance, and we'll take it into account because we want to be doing live shows really, really ASAP. So we will talk to you shortly. We are going to get to the FanDuel video. We'll talk to you soon.